next moving over to an investigation done by our investigative reporter for the Center Square. He looked at what exactly Bernie Sanders is spending on his anti-oligarchy tour coming out of campaign funds. I'm joined here with our investigative reporter, Mark Strickers. Mark, thanks so much for joining us today. I think first it'd be interesting for you to kind of break down the so what. Why is this important to know that, Senator Bernie Sanders has spent over $600,000 on in elite travel and elite spending on this anti-oligarchy tour?
Senator Sanders presents himself as a blunt, no-nonsense crusader against oligarchs. That's to say, powerful, wealthy people like Elon Musk, the Tesla founder. And yet Senator Sanders, through his campaign arm, has spent more than $600,000 on four-star hotels, chauffeured cars and limousine services, and most of all, private jets. Spending that cuts it. That does cut against his image, and frankly, something that he does not mention at all as far as his own personal wealth. I mean, Senator Sanders is worth more than $1 million, according to Quiver Quantitative, a site that tracks lawmakers' fortunes, as well as the fact that his wife, Jane O'Meara Sanders, is a former university president. This is not somebody who's struggling economically.
Yeah. Really interesting story. Senator Bernie Sanders, like you said, he's on this anti-oligarchy tour fighting the oligarchy, but at the same time spending a lot of campaign funds, money on elite travel, jets, all of those things. Walk us through, how you found this information. What was that process like to get this information, and why do you think this is important for taxpayers to know how much he's spending on this tour?
I found it just a couple of months ago, going through the old records of the Federal Election Commission, and looked at the Friends of Bernie Sanders, as I mentioned, his campaign arm, the organization that pays for his campaign expenses since last year, January 2025. And I saw a expense, fairly small expense, $260 for Royal Limousine Services of Missoula, Montana. And I thought, this is unusual. You don't hear about that Bernie Sanders paying for limousine services. Maybe it's him, maybe it's somebody else, you don't know. But that just led me on to look at more generally at what his campaign arm has spent on what you might call elite travel, for lack of a better phrase. And while some outlets, especially conservative ones, have mentioned that Senator Sanders does spend on private jet travel, they haven't looked at also how his use of four-star hotels, which are elite. I mean, 1.5% of all hotels in the United States, North America, in fact, are four-star or four diamonds, that's now known, or as well as chauffeured cars or limousine services. So that's a fact that Senator Sanders himself does not mention. And as far as taxpayers, this is campaign money. This is money from his donors, who are, let's be fair, ordinary people. These are not corporations. He doesn't. Senator Sanders does not accept money from corporate PACs, political action committees, but he's using his donors as money, ordinary people, on at least some 5% of his overall spending since last January 2025 on what you could consider elite travel.
Yeah, and we have a graphic here showing what you kind of broke down for us in your investigative reporting. We have
Right.
here, over almost 600,000 for 11 private jet trips, up to 17,000 for, chauffeured cars, limousines, almost 30,000 for four-star hotels 15 times. This is a lot of money coming from his campaign funds. What are your thoughts when it comes to that dichotomy between this anti-oligarchy tour, as you said, this democratic socialist fighting and railing against billionaires, but he's spending, so much money on campaign funds, on these luxury hotels? What do you make of that?
He does it for two reasons. One is it's just personal, like anybody else. He likes, most people, he likes luxury items when he can use them. I found a story from 2016 in which he stayed at, actually it's about 2 or 3 star hotel in near Palm Springs, California, in which it was called Two Bunch Palms. He stayed there for 2 nights when he was running for president in 2016, and his spokesman said, yes, the hotel Two Bunch Palms had a really nice vibe. His spokesman said Senator Sanders enjoyed it. So that's part of it. It's personal for him, but also it's structural. It's very difficult nowadays running a national campaign, quasi-presidential campaign, by not using private jets. I talked to Democratic strategist Joe Trippi, who helped run former Vermont Governor Howard Dean's campaign in 2004, for some of our older readers and more knowledgeable ones, perhaps. And Mr. Trippi said that nowadays, if you're a national candidate, you pretty much have to use private jets to get from one place to another. You can't do multiple events in one day without them. I guess I questioned that a little bit because I recall former President Bill Clinton and Al Gore, as well as even Senator John McCain in the 2008 campaign, they would go to multiple tours on a bus. But Mr. Trippi said that no, really, you can't do that anymore, that you have to use private jets if you want to make a lot of events.
Yeah, that was really interesting how you highlighted this shift from the 2016 presidential election and how elite travel seems to be, it's not even a political thing or a partisan thing, right? You highlighted in the Sherpa report, there's Surgeon Ben Carson, Senator Ted Cruz, and also Sanders using luxury hotels, private jets. And like you talked to Joe Trippi saying how it's not really practical to try and do 2 rallies in 2 different states without using a private jet. Waiting in line for TSA is going to take a long time. It just makes sense to pay that extra money to have that elite travel so you can get to your locations faster. Now, last time you were on the show, we talked about Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro spending money on elite travel. The last question is this the new norm for congressional members, for those in leadership, using campaign funds on elite travel? Like you said, it's the personal preference, but is this going to be something that we're going to see continuing kind of nationally? And even though it's making some people upset, it doesn't seem like it's changing anytime soon.
I think, I don't know if it's been the new norm. It's been the norm for about a generation, you might say. Maybe the press hasn't picked up on it, or ordinary folks have. But yes, candidates, especially presidential candidates, use private jets. I talked to Mr. Trippi, and he said back in, I believe it was the late 80s, Senator Reverend Jesse Jackson, he picked up an old private jet that Mr. Trippi's his candidate, Richard Gephardt, congressman from Missouri, used. So this has been going on for a while. And let's be honest here. I mean, President Trump was given a custom 747 Boeing by the Middle East nation of Qatar last year, and President Trump flies around on his own 757. So let's just we got to put things in perspective about how presidential candidates travel around nowadays.
Yeah, we'll greatly appreciate your reporting. Thank you so much for joining us. Mark Stricker, investigative reporter for the Center Square. If you'd like to continue to follow more investigative reports like this, to find out, how much are taxpayers paying, how much are, these lawmakers using for their campaign funds, you can go to our website at thecentersquare.com.